Welcome back to Guess What? Compliance Can Be Simple. I'm your host, Dr. Natasha Guess, and today we are going deeper than ever before. We're talking about the hidden, often invisible operational patterns inside small healthcare practices. You know, those ones that quietly predict audit problems long before an auditor decides to even look at your practice, to even look at your policy, your training logs, or any document that they can review. Those patterns that operate beneath the surface, they're usually quiet, consistent, and sometimes destructive. And if you've ever wondered why some practices struggle during audits, even though they thought they were compliant, it almost always comes down to these silent behavioral operational patterns. So let's get into it. Do you know what auditors really notice first? I'm going to tell you. Auditors rarely start with documents. They start with signals. They pay attention to who answers questions confidently, whether your staff describe workflows the same way. They look at how organized your operations appear, timing patterns in your documentation. They review how your team interacts with each other, how your patient flow looks, and how that feels. Um, Auditors are trained to identify operational truth, not performative order. Before they ever read your training log, they're already reading your practice. And I know you're sitting there, you're like, what do you mean? And I mean that there are signals. Your practice, every practice has a signal, and your signals tell the story. Today, I'm going to focus on the patterns that auditors look at, the patterns that they see first. There are several different ones, and we'll go through each one, talk about it, give an example, and I'll let you know how to fix that. So, the first pattern that's hidden mostly in every practice that I've come across is the drift pattern. And I know you're like, what is drift? Drift is the gradual shift of daily workflows away from the original standards without anyone noticing. And that's just, you have a policy and procedure document. It's standardized. It should be used in your practice for everyone. But then occasionally someone changes something, does something different because it's a little easier, or, it's so busy that I need to do something short instead of following the guides that are there. For example, a provider stops documenting certain details because they're in a rush, or the front desk verifies identity inconsistently during busy times, or one of your technicians decides to skip confirmation steps because the provider knows the patient. These are all drift. And drift is dangerous because it feels harmless. But when an auditor catch a drift, instantly they can see that the drift created inconsistency. And inconsistency is the number one predictor of audit failure. So, as a small practice, how do you fix the drift? Well, you have to identify one workflow with noticeable drift. Rewrite a clear, simple standard, something that's under 30 seconds. Reintroduce it to your team in huddles and meetings so that everyone knows that something has been updated. And then reinforce it weekly for 30 days. Audit it informally, say once a month, maybe twice a month if you have that time. Because drift is not solved by policy, it's solved by reinforcement. So your team needs that reinforcement. The next hidden pattern that I've seen a lot is communication breakdown. Practices with strong communication have fewer audit findings, period. So, what kind of signs are we looking for here? Well, you have a team member that do not share updates about workflow changes, or no one reminds others about required documentation. Then you have some staff members that hesitate to ask questions about unclear processes because they do not want to feel like, they're stupid in doing so. Another one is your leadership assumes that information has been shared with the practice but doesn't confirm. See, different team members might also describe the same workflow differently. And when an auditor gets to your practice, they often ask multiple staff members the exact same question. Not because they need the answer, but because they want to test consistency. So ensure that your team members are consistently doing the same things and have the same processes and standards. Another one that I've seen when it comes to communication is that someone might know a new policy has changed within the regulations, but because upper management has not sent out a formal notice to team members, they stay quiet about it. That does not work at all. So, to fix those breakdowns, you have to introduce micro checkpoints. Say 10 seconds per shift. You just talk about those checkpoints. Then create a communication map. Some staff may need it, some may not, but have it there so that they can review it if ever needed. Then use your meeting huddles for reminders. Not long meetings, just those quick huddles, and you give those reminders to your staff. Also, you should build some language cues. Something like, can you confirm? Or let's double check that. Or who needs to know this? Small communication habits prevent large compliance failures. So ensure that you are doing that. Another hidden pattern that I've noticed over the years are ownership vacuums. An ownership vacuum is when multiple people believe someone else is responsible for a task, but in actuality, no one is. So that goes like no one knows who updates the compliance binders, or no one monitors vendor access changes, or no one is tracking your staff credential expirations. There's no updates to emergency plans. Everyone just assumes someone else verified something. And guess what? Auditors always ask, who is responsible for this? They don't want to see your policy. They don't want to see this person and that person. 5 different people are looking at it, but there's no one owner. They want one person and a process. So how do you fix those ownership vacuums? Well, create a responsibility matrix. Assign one owner per micro task. Then ensure that you have backup owners, because someone always gets sick or have to call out for an emergency, so always have a backup owner for that person. Then you should post ownership lists in break rooms or staff areas and review those ownership quarterly to ensure that it's still accurate. When you do this, you will eliminate confusion. And when you eliminate confusion, you're eliminating risk. Another pattern I've noticed is timing patterns. And most practices do not realize that timing matters more than most anything else. Auditors review timing patterns. First, they look at your logs. Have they been updated the week before the audit? That's a big red flag. Do signatures all fall on the same day? There is no way that you train all your staff the same exact day. Someone has to be there to run your practice, to meet your patients. So you are not training everyone the same day. So if those signatures are all on the same day, that's a red flag. Do training logs show inconsistent timelines? Another red flag. Are your annual reviews happening every 16 to 18 months instead of yearly? That's a big no-no. Annual review, yearly. Are corrective actions being documented long after incidents occur? See, timing reveals the truth about what happens in your practice. So, if your timing looks rushed, auditors assume that the system is weak. So, how do we go about fixing these timing problems? Introduce mini monthly reviews. Take 10 minutes and do that. Set calendar-based processes, not memory-based ones. That will always fail if it's by memory only. Use automation for reminders to your staff. Document corrections immediately, not later. Immediately. Track your timing patterns openly so everyone sees that consistency. And then we have another hidden pattern that is usually seen, and that is patient experience patterns. Patient experience reflects operational consistency. Now, if your patients feel confused, frustrated, or even misdirected, auditors will detect that underlying cause. Some examples of that are unclear check-in process, repetitive questioning, mixed instructions from different staff members, long delays due to missing information, and then you have staff scrambling or apparent uncertain. Those are all things that auditors can pick up on. So to fix those type of patterns, map the patient journey step by step with your staff, identify confusing points, then standardize the first 60 seconds of every visit. Ensure that you're also training your staff on unified language. That is really important. And review monthly with feedback from your staff and patients. So the smoother the patient experience, the stronger the compliance structure. Now, we're going to have to reset your practice patterns. How do we do that? I could tell you. Here's the system that I use in real practices to remove those hidden patterns. 1, identify the pattern. Then name the risk it creates. Reduce it to one standard. Then assign one owner. Teach it in 60 seconds. Then reinforce it weekly with staff members. Audit it monthly. And then refresh it quarterly. Patterns are changed by routine, not policy. Mini audit moment here. If an auditor walked in today and asked 3 team members to describe the check-in process, would their answers match? If the answer is no, you have a pattern problem. Ask yourself, where is your drift happening? Where are communication gaps visible in your practice? What do patients feel that we've ignored? What are those tasks that has no clear owner? And where are time and inconsistencies hurting you? Start with the pattern that affects patient experience the most. And to help you evaluate your operational patterns, download the Pattern Reset Worksheet at guestcomplianceconsultantllc.com. It walks you through identifying each pattern and correcting it using the system in this episode.